again, everyone, and welcome back to Reddit Aliens. I am John, and as always, thank you so much for being here. Solid topic, let's do it. What's a strange, unexplainable experience that happened to you? Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. Hiking in the Pacific Northwest, getting water from a stream. All of a sudden, this huge rock comes flying out of the woods and lands like 10 feet away from me. Too heavy for me to lift, and I'm fairly strong, and this was thrown at least 20 feet. Needless to say, I got the F out of there ASAP. I woke up in the middle of the night, and the lamp, a floor lamp with 3 studio-type lights that have to be twisted on separately, had turned on and propped or leaning on my bed with one of the lights pointed at my face. About 6 months ago, I had a dream about sitting in a room across a table from someone I vaguely recognized but couldn't quite place. I woke up, thought it was weird but didn't think much of it. A couple of months ago, I flew from Australia to the UK to attend a high school friend's wedding. Halfway through the reception, my brain suddenly took notice of the greenery outside the window, the cake in the corner, and the person I was talking to. Someone from the year below me in high school who'd I'd maybe seen once since leaving high school about 15 years ago. The details were exactly as I remember in the dream I'd had earlier in the year. I'd never been to that venue, and the wedding cake was quite unusual looking, so I hadn't seen one quite like it before. I sat pretty quietly for a few minutes as I was a bit spooked. I woke up one morning to find what looked like several small burns on my hand. I hadn't touched anything hot or done anything other than normal. They were just there one morning. Over the next few weeks, they gradually got worse, almost blistering. One summer night in Wisconsin maybe 13 years ago, as dark as it can be outside, I'm still awake in my bedroom watching TV. Suddenly, a bright fluorescent green light fills the entire sky and lights up my entire room. It became so bright that it looked like the sun was out again, but green. It was blink and you'll miss it. I ran to my window, and it was completely dark out again. I thought I had imagined it until the next morning when other kids at school saw it too. I had this really bad paranoia regarding nighttime when I was younger. I couldn't be outside at night alone. Honestly, even in a group of people, I felt extremely vulnerable outside at night. I couldn't look out the window. I couldn't be home alone after sundown. And before going to bed, I made absolutely sure that every single door and window were locked. I was at my aunt's home, and my nighttime safety routine was no exception outside of my home. I ensured every window and door were firmly closed and locked. It's important to note that from where I was positioned on the couch, no one could have gone into the kitchen without me seeing them. I heard a lot of strange noises in the kitchen that night, so I definitely didn't sleep a wink. No possibility of me falling asleep and not realizing it. I was texting a friend who was in the UK at the time. My uncle went into the kitchen at 7:30, made a comment about how he was surprised the 15-year-old was awake that early, and then made another comment how he was surprised that I not only didn't lock the kitchen door, but left it open all night. I never stayed there again. I checked that door several times before bed and was the last one up. Nope, nope, nope. Once in like 9th grade, I witnessed a kid whip a wooden stool as hard as he possibly could at another kid's back, and the kid didn't even notice, like not even flinching. The other kids he was talking to didn't notice either, even though it made a huge cracking noise and shattered on impact. They didn't even look at the ruins until like half an hour later. It was strange. My father came and visited me one evening after I'd gotten off work. I had brought some takeout and was smashing on the walnut shrimp and chicken rice when he walked in and sat down next to me on my couch. I was neither afraid nor surprised. It was sort of like I was in a trance. We spoke for a long time about life and how things were, and then, just like that, he got up, walked out the front door, and was just gone, like poof, only without the little puff of smoke in a cartoon. What was weird about this, you ask? He had been dead for a little over 6 months when this happened. I was not asleep, on drugs, or drinking alcohol. My house is an old brick building that was used by fishermen and is well over 120 years old, so there's no carbon monoxide. We use a fireplace in the winter, and this was during the summer, so I had the windows open and fans on. Your guess is as good as mine. Perhaps it was wishful thinking and a random hallucination. Maybe there really is something to this whole supernatural shit show. I've been a believer in the supernatural since I was a child, but I'm extremely skeptical of everything and like to label myself as an atheist without any balls. There are things we will never understand about this world. Maybe it was just an extremely vivid dream that put things together from the day and it all connected into one. Or maybe it was your dad. Either way, it's a good memory. One time I was just chilling in my basement when my ears all of a sudden started to ring. I didn't really care because it happens to me every now and then. This particular time, though, it would not stop. It got louder, too, so I just sat there kind of deaf. After 5 minutes, it finally went away. I went upstairs and met the surprised face of my mom. She told me that I had been gone for hours and that she almost called the police. I felt really weird after that. I thought it was only 5 minutes. I was looking at my phone, too, so I knew the time. When my brother and I were growing up, my mother worked nights and slept days. We grew up poor, so my mom was very strict on what we could eat and when. We came home after school one day, and she had bought bananas. My brother and I decided to eat a couple. We start peeling the bananas, and my mother, who was sleeping in a bedroom around the corner down a hallway and in the last room on the left with the door closed, screamed, "Put those bananas down!" We scrambled to rewrap the skins and then quietly open her bedroom door to say hi. She was sound asleep, and later she swears she never yelled at us to put them down and had no idea we were eating them. Sometimes I feel like I'm walking on bones, not in a way that it hurts, but in a way that I'm sort of hyper aware of my bones, specifically my leg bones when walking. When this happens, it's almost like I unwillingly imagine myself as a skeleton, and I have a hard time feeling or just recognizing any sensation in my flesh or muscles. I'm honestly not describing it well, but it's the best that I can do. I can hit or pinch myself pretty hard and not have it register, to the point of having a bruise after. I bruised myself a couple times, so I don't test that out anymore. I was pretty young the first time it happened, so it freaked me out then. It doesn't really happen often, and I can talk myself out of it, so I can mostly just ignore it now. It'll last about 10 minutes or so, and then I'll feel like my normal self again. It's still a very weird sensation. The running hypothesis is that it's a sort of depersonalization that normally happens when stressed, but I have no clue why it manifests itself that way. So I probably know a bit of the why, but can't figure out the rest. Not really an unexplainable moment, but more of a very surreal experience. When I was 23, I signed up through my college to go to a drive-up flu shot clinic. It ended up being 50 college students loaded on a school bus and driven to a local hospital for flu shots in the parking lot. I knew 2 other people on the bus. When we got to the hospital, there were several lanes set up for cars to go through. We were directed into the lane farthest on the right. There were 2 nurses that came on the bus and handed us paperwork to fill out. Then we moved up in line, and 2 different nurses went over the paperwork with us. Finally, we moved up in line again, and 2 nurses came on the bus and gave us our flu shots one by one. One nurse started at the back of the bus, and one started at the front of the bus, and they worked their way toward the middle. It really made me feel like I was in some sort of apocalypse or zombie movie, and we were being shipped to a safe zone and inoculated or something. It was a very strange experience, and I feel like I've never been able to convey how strange it felt to other people. Yeah, that could definitely feel like a kind of post-apocalyptic, setting, so sure. I had something similar a billion years ago, too. When you first go to boot camp, they give you like 20 shots in like an hour. It's wild. So when I was 12, I really loved to adventure, but living in the city, I didn't have many options. My favorite was sitting on the clothesline pole shaped like a T at night. I was high up, and at this time of year, it was a little chilly after dark, so it all felt amazing. The T was in the back of the backyard, and the way I sat, my back was always to the alley directly behind me, therefore facing my house. So when this happened, I was oddly calm. I heard this weird deep breathing almost directly in my ear. I turned to my left because my neighbor at the time sometimes got home late. Nope, David or his wife, although Linda couldn't even make a breath like that, weren't around. I hear it again, so I turned to my right, which is looking down the alley. I just figured it was someone walking through, because hey, I don't live in the greatest area. Again, nothing. You know that feeling of dread you have before you get a shot or blood drawn? Combine that with fear. That's what I felt when I heard the breathing one more time, and it sounded even closer and more menacing. I used one hand to propel me off the tee to the ground, the other just holding my phone and trying to balance. I had never run so quickly before, anything to get back in my house. My sister and I get stress headaches that easily turn into migraines. One time I was having a migraine and I stayed in my room for about 2 days. I finally felt well enough to leave my room and I went to have a chat with my sister. As we were talking, I put my hand on her head, I forgot why, and for a second, I felt relief from my migraine before it returned. My sister's brow furrowed, and she told me that for a second, she felt a really intense migraine before feeling all right again. To this day, we still don't know what happened. All we know is that I put my hand on her head, and it was almost like my pain transferred to her for a moment. I was once absent-mindedly playing with a rubber band. I managed to tie a knot in the middle, and I was finding and fiddling with it to try and untie it. I ended up breaking the rubber band into 2 parts where the knot was. 2 of the ends ended up merging together and forming a smaller, fully complete rubber band. If you've ever worn braces, it's the kind you wear on those little hooks to help realign your jaws. Was going for a drive. I forgot something before we left the driveway and ran back upstairs. I was out of the apartment in maybe 5 minutes tops. The jar candle that had been on the shelf exploded on the carpet in the middle of the living room about 10 feet from the shelf. After 30 seconds of standing there in disbelief, the phone rings. One of our friends shot himself about 4 minutes prior. Another time, I was sitting in the living room watching TV in the middle of the night. I see this neon blue light floating down the hall about 5 feet off of the ground. It travels down the hall across the living room, creates a static interference noise as it passes by the TV, circles the room, and is absorbed into my laptop speakers, making a loud zap noise. Surprisingly, it didn't do any damage. Another time, my SO and I were laying in bed, and the overhead light began to glow as if someone was slowly turning up a dimmer switch. As it began to fade out, the light in the hall began to glow, followed by the kitchen, the dining room, and the living room. It was as if it were moving through the apartment. There are no dimmer switches in our apartment. The whole thing took 2 minutes. Did that just... Yep, F. My dog's ashes disappeared. The urn had been sitting on a shelf in our living room for 3 years, and one day my husband and I walked in and the urn was gone. No one has keys but us. We were both seriously puzzled, and neither of us moved. No one would break in and steal ashes. We still talk about it a year later and try to puzzle it out, but we cannot think of how it happened. My husband doesn't lie to me, and would have no reason to if he accidentally broke it or something. It would be fine. They were there when we left the house to go to a movie and gone when we got back, so it couldn't have been him. Anyway, I seriously defy anyone to explain it. We don't believe in anything supernatural, and there's no access to our house without keys or breaking in, and everything was locked. And if anyone can shed light on this, I would be super surprised and grateful. I literally couldn't sleep for a while as I was so annoyed that I didn't know what happened to them. If somebody did steal dog ashes, that's not cool. It's probably one of the worst things that you could possibly do. Scum. I'm a trained scientist and truly don't believe in ghosts, the paranormal, or anything else, but it's absolutely true that I dreamed of my grandmother saying goodbye to me the night she died. I didn't find out that she had until a few days later. I'd never dreamed of her before that, and have never dreamed of her again since. I was in my basement really late at night watching TV, and suddenly at the top of the stairs there was a super bright flash of light. I've never been able to explain what caused it. It looked like it had that camera on and took a picture of me. But that was there no more, and it was way brighter than a camera flash. It really freaked me out.